Chapter 1, Platform 0. The wind always arrived first. Every night at 11:57, the sea breeze swept through Blackthorn Station like an unwelcome visitor, rattling loose window panes and carrying the scent of salt water from the cliffs beyond the tracks. Adrian Reyes had learned to measure time by it. The old station clock claimed it was 3 minutes to midnight. The wind agreed. Adrian closed the novel he'd been pretending to read and glanced toward the dark railway beyond the platform. Nothing. Just as empty as it had been every night for the past 3 years. He leaned back in his chair. 3 years. 3 years of working a station nobody used. 3 years of watching a train that officially didn't exist. 3 years of wondering why he couldn't bring himself to leave. The government had shut down Blackthorn Station nearly a decade ago. Most people in the nearby town barely remembered it existed. Officially, Adrian worked security. Unofficially, he was waiting. For what? He couldn't have answered. The feeling sat deep inside him like a forgotten promise. A memory he couldn't quite reach. The clock clicked. 11:58 p.m. A loose shiver ran down his spine. Right on schedule. Outside, the wind died. Silence swallowed the station. Not ordinary silence. Something deeper. As though the world itself was holding its breath. Adrian stood. He crossed the office and stepped onto the platform. Moonlight painted the abandoned station silver. The tracks stretched into darkness. Empty. Still empty. Then, a distant glow appeared. Not from the town. Not from the lighthouse. The tracks themselves seemed to shimmer. Adrian's heartbeat quickened. Every single night. The same impossible sight. The glow brightened. Metal emerged from darkness. A silver locomotive rolled silently toward the station. No engine noise. No whistle. No headlights. No destination sign. The train simply appeared. As though reality had forgotten it wasn't supposed to exist. The train that stops nowhere. The name belonged to local folklore. A ghost story shared by fishermen and insomniacs. Most laughed when they told it. Adrian never laughed. Because he saw it every night. The train slowed. Stopped. The doors slid open. And someone stepped off. Teenage boy. 17 perhaps. Messy hair. School uniform. Fear in his eyes. The boy looked around. Confused. Lost. Adrian already knew what would happen next. It always happened the same way. The boy spotted him. Relief flooded his face. "Excuse me." Adrian approached slowly. The boy hurried over. "Thank God. I thought I was alone." "You aren't." "Where am I?" Adrian sighed. There it was. Question number 1. The beginning. Always. The beginning. Blackthorn Station. The boy frowned. "I've never heard of it." "Most people haven't." The boy glanced toward the train. "Why am I here?" Question number 2. Adrian rubbed the back of his neck. He hated this part. Every time. No matter how many years passed. "I need you to think carefully." The boy nodded nervously. "What were you doing before you arrived?" Confusion crossed his face. Then realization. Then fear. A lot of fear. The boy's skin turned pale. His voice cracked. "I was crossing the street." Adrian stayed silent. The boy staggered backward. There was a truck. Silence. "No." His breathing became ragged. "Please no." The tears arrived. They always did. The boy collapsed onto a nearby bench. "I'm dead." Not a question. A statement. Adrian lowered himself beside him. For a moment neither spoke. Only the distant crashing of waves filled the silence. Finally the boy whispered, "My mom." Adrian closed his eyes. Always someone left behind. Always unfinished words. Unfinished lives. Unfinished love. What happens now? Adrian looked toward the train. The silver carriages gleamed beneath moonlight. Waiting. Patient. Eternal. "You get one chance." The boy stared. "A chance?" "You can revisit one memory." Hope flickered across his face. "Can I change it?" No. The hope died. Then why? Adrian looked toward the sea. Because he had asked that same question once. Long ago. A question he couldn't quite remember asking. "Sometimes," he said softly, People don't need to change the past. The boy listened. Sometimes they only need to understand it. The boy boarded the train 20 minutes later. The doors closed. The train departed. And midnight returned. Usually that was the end. Usually. But not tonight. Because another passenger stepped off. After the train should have left. After the doors should have closed. A man. Tall. Dark-haired. Elegant black coat. Perhaps early 30s. Handsome enough to belong in a movie rather than an abandoned station. The stranger smiled. Not politely. Not awkwardly. The smile of someone greeting an old friend. Adrian froze. Something about him felt wrong. No, not wrong. Recognizable. Haunting. The stranger's eyes softened. Gold. Not truly gold. Just the kind of amber eyes that caught moonlight. Yet Adrian suddenly couldn't breathe. The man took a single step forward. Hello, Adrian. Adrian's pulse stumbled. How did he know his name? Every instinct screamed that they had never met. Yet every part of him felt otherwise. The stranger smiled again. A sad smile this time, as if he had expected this reaction. As I feared. Adrian frowned. What? The man's gaze lingered on him. Gentle. Heartbroken. Hopeful. All at once. You still don't remember me. The station seemed to tilt. Something inside Adrian's chest tightened painfully. The stranger continued. It's all right. His voice was warm. Intimate. Dangerously intimate. I've been waiting a very long time for you. A cold shiver ran through Adrian. Who are you? The stranger looked toward the tracks. Toward the darkness where the train had vanished. Then back to Adrian. And for a brief moment, the loneliness in his eyes seemed older than time itself. My name is Lucian. The wind returned. The station lights flickered. And somewhere deep inside Adrian's heart, a forgotten memory stirred. Chapter 2. The passenger who returned. Adrian barely slept. Not that sleep came easily these days. For years, his nights had belonged to the station. His days belonged to exhaustion. But this time, exhaustion wasn't the reason. Lucian was. The stranger had vanished before dawn. One moment he stood on the platform. The next, he had simply walked toward the far end of the station and disappeared into the darkness. Without explanation. Without answers. Only questions. Questions Adrian couldn't stop thinking about. Who was he? How did he know his name? And perhaps most unsettling of all, why had seeing him felt like reopening an old wound? A wound Adrian couldn't remember receiving. The next night arrived too quickly. At 11:57, Adrian found himself standing outside before the wind even started. Waiting. The realization irritated him. He wasn't waiting. He was being practical. The man was clearly connected to the train. If anyone knew what was happening at Blackthorn Station, it was him. That was all. Nothing more. At least that's what Adrian told himself. Midnight arrived. The wind disappeared. The impossible train emerged from darkness. Its silver body reflected moonlight as it glided silently into the station. The doors opened. A woman stepped out, middle-aged, tearful, lost. Another soul beginning their final journey. Adrian helped her through the same process. The same questions. The same grief. The same chance to revisit one memory. When she finally boarded again, Adrian found himself glancing beyond her. Searching. Looking for amber eyes. The train doors began closing. Disappointment settled unexpectedly in his chest. Then, a hand appeared between the narrowing doors. The mechanism stopped instantly. The doors reopened, and Lucian stepped onto the platform. The smile he gave Adrian felt infuriatingly pleased. You waited. I did not. You did. I was working. Lucian laughed softly. The sound struck Adrian strangely. Warm. Comfortable. Dangerous. As if he'd heard it countless times before. I've missed that expression. Adrian frowned. What expression? The one where you're annoyed but trying not to show it. I'm not annoyed. Lucian's smile widened. Exactly that one. Adrian groaned. The stranger somehow made him feel simultaneously irritated and curious. An impossible combination. Lucien approached. For the first time, Adrian noticed details he had missed before. The faint scar above Lucien's eyebrow. The way his dark hair curled slightly at the ends. The subtle weariness behind his eyes. Not physical exhaustion. Something deeper. The exhaustion of waiting. Years of waiting. Maybe longer. "Who are you?" Adrian asked. Lucien's expression softened. "We have time tonight." "That's not an answer." "I know." Adrian crossed his arms. "Then answer." Lucien looked toward the ocean. "The truth won't mean anything until you remember." "There you go again." "I know. I hate when you do that." A strange look crossed Lucien's face. Something close to affection. "You always hated it." The certainty in his voice made Adrian's chest tighten. "Always. As though we had shared a past. As though Lucien wasn't guessing. As though he knew." Over the next several nights, Lucien continued returning. Every midnight. Without fail. He never boarded with the other passengers. Never revisited a memory. Never moved on. He simply appeared after the train arrived. And stayed until dawn. At first Adrian demanded answers. Eventually he gave up. Lucien refused to explain anything directly. Instead he asked questions. Questions that made no sense. "Do you still like thunderstorms?" "What?" "You used to." "How would you know that?" Lucien smiled. No answer. Another night. "Do you still sing when you're nervous?" Adrian nearly dropped the coffee he was holding. "I don't sing." "You do." "Absolutely not." "You absolutely do." "Stop making things up." Lucien laughed again. That laugh. Every time Adrian heard it, something inside him shifted. A small crack forming in a wall he hadn't known existed. Weeks passed. Then months. And somehow Lucien became part of Adrian's life. Neither acknowledged it. Neither discussed it. It simply happened. They shared coffee. Conversations. Silences. Stories. The loneliness that had consumed Blackthorn Station for years began fading. For the first time since arriving, Adrian looked forward to midnight. That realization terrified him. Because Lucien remained a mystery. Because every answer seemed buried inside memories Adrian couldn't access. And because part of him had begun suspecting the truth. A truth he wasn't ready to face. He knew this man. Not recently. Not casually. Not from some forgotten encounter. He knew him deeply. The way one knows the shape of a favorite hand. The sound of a familiar laugh. The rhythm of a beloved voice. One rainy evening, the realization finally surfaced. Not fully. Only enough to frighten him. Lucien was standing beside the platform railing. Watching lightning flash over the sea. Adrian joined him. For several minutes they simply listened to the storm. Then Lucien spoke quietly. "You used to love rain." Adrian froze. Not because of the words. Because suddenly, a memory flashed. Brief. Violent. A young man laughing. Running through a storm. Pulling Adrian by the hand. Warm fingers intertwined with his own. Joy. Happiness. Then gone. Adrian staggered. His head exploded with pain. Lucien immediately caught him. Strong arms wrapped around him. Steadying him. Protecting him. And the moment Lucien touched him, another memory surfaced. Touch of lips. Tender. Rain falling around them. A lighthouse in the distance. Love. So much love. Adrian gasped. The world spun. His knees nearly buckled. "Adrian." Lucien's voice trembled. "Look at me." Adrian slowly raised his head. For the first time, fear appeared in Lucien's eyes. Not fear for himself. Fear for Adrian. "What did you see?" Lucien whispered. Adrian's throat tightened. The memory was already fading. Like smoke slipping through his fingers. But one thing remained. One certainty. One truth impossible to ignore. The man standing before him wasn't a stranger. Had never been a stranger. And whatever relationship they once shared, it had been far more than friendship. Adrian stared into Lucien's amber eyes. His heart pounding. His breath shaking. Then, barely above a whisper, he asked the question both of them had been avoiding. "Lucien." Lucien waited. Did I love you? Silence. The storm raged beyond the station. Lightning illuminated the ocean. And for a moment, Lucien looked heartbreakingly vulnerable. Then he smiled. A small smile. Tender. Bittersweet. Filled with years of longing. Very much. Adrian's chest ached. Then why don't I remember? Lucien looked away. Toward the distant sea. Toward something only he could see. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Because remembering me was the price you paid to survive. And for the first time since they met, Lucien looked as though he might cry. Chapter 3, One Memory. For several moments, neither man spoke. The rain continued to fall beyond the platform. The sea crashed against distant cliffs. And Adrian stood frozen beneath the weight of a single sentence. Remembering me was the price you paid to survive. The words echoed inside his mind. Again, and again, and again. Finally, he found his voice. What does that mean? Lucien's gaze remained fixed on the darkness beyond the station. It means exactly what it sounds like. Adrian took a step forward. No. His voice sharpened. No more half answers. Lucien closed his eyes. Adrian. Enough. Years of frustration erupted at once. Years of loneliness. Years of confusion. Years of waiting for answers he didn't even know he needed. You walk into my life. Another step. You know things about me nobody should know. Another. You tell me I loved you. His voice cracked. You tell me I forgot you. Silence. Then tell me the rest. For the first time, Lucien looked uncertain. Not mysterious. Not composed. Not untouchable. Simply uncertain. Like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, wondering whether to jump. You're not ready. Adrian laughed bitterly. Try me. A flash of lightning illuminated the station. Lucien studied him, searching, measuring. Then finally, he nodded. Come with me. The far end of Blackthorn Station was a place Adrian rarely visited. The platform eventually gave way to overgrown tracks and rusted maintenance sheds. Beyond them stood an ancient signal tower. Abandoned. Forgotten. At least that's what Adrian had always believed. Tonight, however, a faint light glowed behind one of the dusty windows. Lucien climbed the stairs first. Adrian followed. The wooden steps creaked beneath their feet. At the top, Lucien opened a weathered door. And Adrian stopped breathing. The room was impossible. Photographs covered every wall. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Pictures of Adrian. At different ages. Different years. Different moments. Adrian at 20. Adrian at 25. Adrian smiling. Sleeping. Laughing. Reading. Living. His stomach dropped. What is this? Lucien remained silent. Adrian walked slowly through the room. Each photograph felt like a stolen piece of his life. A record of years he couldn't remember sharing with anyone. Then he saw them. The photographs that included another person. Lucien. Standing beside him. Holding his hand. Leaning against his shoulder. Looking at him with unmistakable affection. The room tilted. No. Adrian stared. No. A photograph from a beach. Another from a bookstore. Another from a lighthouse. Another from a small apartment. Another. Evidence. Proof. A life together. An entire relationship. Years. Years Adrian couldn't remember. His chest tightened painfully. How long? Lucien answered quietly. 5 years. Adrian looked at him. 5 years. Lucien nodded. We were together for 5 years. The words landed like a physical blow. 5 years. Not a brief romance. Not a passing relationship. 5 years. A future. A life. Love. Gone. Stolen by memories he couldn't access. Adrian sank into a nearby chair. His hands shook. 5 years. Gone. And somehow Lucien looked even more devastated than he felt. Why keep these? Adrian asked. Lucien smiled sadly. Because I was afraid I'd forget your face. The answer shattered something inside him. Because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It was honest. Terribly honest. The kind of honesty only loneliness creates. Years of loneliness. Years spent remembering someone who no longer remembered him. Adrian looked away, suddenly unable to meet Lucien's eyes. Near dawn, Lucien finally told him everything. Or at least the beginning. They had met 7 years ago. A rainy afternoon. A coastal bookstore. Lucien had been searching for shelter. Adrian had been searching for a novel. Both had reached for the same book. Neither had let go. According to Lucien, they argued for 10 minutes before agreeing to share a table at a nearby cafe. The date lasted 6 hours. The second date lasted 9. The third ended with their first kiss. Adrian listened, hungry for every detail, every stolen piece of his own history. You proposed first. Adrian blinked. What? Lucien laughed softly. You were terrible at it. Excuse me? You forgot your speech. I had a speech? A very long one. Lucien's smile widened. You panicked halfway through and accidentally proposed while discussing weather patterns. Adrian groaned. That sounds like something I'd do. It absolutely sounds like something you do. For a brief moment they laughed together. And somehow the years between them felt smaller. Not gone, but smaller. The laughter faded. The silence returned. Then Adrian asked the question neither had wanted to face. What happened? Lucien's smile disappeared. Immediately, as though someone had extinguished sunlight. The answer came quietly. There was an accident. The room grew cold. Adrian knew, even before hearing the rest. Some instinct deep inside him already knew. A storm. Lucien nodded. The lighthouse. The memory struck without warning. Not complete. Only fragments. Storm. Darkness. Waves. Fear. Someone screaming his name. Someone running toward him. Then, pain. Agony. Blackness. Adrian grabbed the edge of the table. His breathing became ragged. The memory vanished again, leaving only terror behind. Lucien immediately moved beside him. It's okay. Adrian shook his head. No. The words barely emerged. What happened? Lucien looked away. And in that moment, Adrian knew the answer wouldn't be simple, wouldn't be kind, wouldn't be fair. Because if forgetting Lucien had saved his life, then remembering him probably meant losing something else. And suddenly Adrian wasn't sure he wanted the truth. But it was already coming. The first rays of dawn touched the horizon. The train whistle echoed somewhere beyond reality. And Lucien whispered the words that changed everything. The night of the storm. His voice trembled. I died. Silence. Absolute silence. Adrian stared, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to process what he'd heard. Lucien offered a small, broken smile. The smile of a man who had carried grief for far too long. You survived. The room blurred. No. Adrian's voice cracked. No. Lucien nodded slowly. Yes. Outside, dawn continued rising. And for the first time since meeting Lucien, Adrian understood the impossible truth. The man he loved, the man he had spent years unknowingly searching for, the man standing beside him right now, wasn't supposed to be alive. Chapter 4. The Man Between Stations. The words refused to make sense. I died. Adrian stared at Lucien. The room seemed too small, the air too thin, the rising sun outside too bright. No matter how many times he replayed the sentence, his mind rejected it. Because Lucien was standing right there, breathing, speaking, looking at him. Dead people didn't do that. Yet nothing about the midnight train had ever obeyed ordinary rules. Lucien sat across from him, patient, giving Adrian time, perhaps because he already knew what came next. Denial, confusion, fear. Adrian finally spoke. Then what are you? Lucien smiled sadly. I've been asking myself the same question for years. The answer sent a chill through the room. Years. Not days. Not months. Years. How long? 5 years. Adrian swallowed. 5 years trapped between life and death. 5 years riding a train that existed nowhere. 5 years searching for someone who no longer remembered him. The loneliness of that realization nearly broke him. Before he could speak again, Footsteps echoed from below. Slow. Measured. Unthinkable. Neither man had heard anyone enter. Yet someone was climbing the tower stairs. Lucien immediately stood. His expression hardened. The change startled Adrian. For the first time since meeting him, Lucien looked genuinely concerned. The door opened. A man stepped inside. Tall. Silver-haired. Dressed in a black conductor's uniform that seemed untouched by time. His age was impossible to determine. 40, 70, 100. His face revealed nothing. His pale eyes swept across the room, finally settling on Adrian. Then Lucien. A sigh escaped him. You've accelerated the timeline. Lucien folded his arms. It was inevitable. I was hoping for another year. Adrian looked between them. Would somebody explain what's happening? The newcomer regarded him calmly. You must be Adrian. I know my own name. Good. The man offered a small nod. That saves time. Adrian stared. Something about the stranger felt ancient. Not old. Ancient. Like standing before the ocean. Or a mountain. Or a storm. The silver-haired man removed his gloves. My name is Elias. Recognition struck immediately. The conductor. The one who guided souls aboard the midnight train. The figure Adrian occasionally glimpsed through carriage windows. The man passengers seemed unable to remember afterward. Elias pulled out a chair, sat down, and spoke the words that changed everything. Lucien was never meant to remain. Silence. Adrian's stomach dropped. Elias continued. The train exists for unfinished souls. His voice carried quiet authority. Those burdened by regret are granted one final opportunity. The memory journeys. Elias nodded. Exactly. Adrian frowned. Then why is Lucien still here? Neither man answered immediately. The silence itself became an answer. Terrible one. Eventually Elias spoke. Because he refused to leave. Adrian blinked. What? Lucien looked away. Elias continued. The night Lucien died, he boarded the train. The room seemed to darken. He was offered the same choice as everyone else. One memory, one chance, one farewell. But he declined. Adrian stared. You can do that? Very few do. Elias folded his hands. Most people long for closure. His gaze shifted toward Lucien. He wanted something else. Adrian already knew. Before hearing the words, some part of him knew. He wanted me. Lucien smiled faintly. Always quick. The simple admission hit harder than any dramatic confession ever could. Not because of what was said, because of how naturally it was spoken. As though there had never been another answer. Elias nodded. Lucien believed there was a way to return. And there wasn't? The conductor's expression softened. No. A heavy silence settled over the room. 5 years. 5 years spent chasing an impossible hope. 5 years refusing peace. 5 years refusing to move on. For him. Only for him. Adrian's chest hurt. The feeling intensified when he looked at Lucien. Because Lucien wasn't angry. Wasn't bitter. Didn't regret it. Not even slightly. You're an idiot. Lucien laughed. There he is. You spent 5 years trapped between worlds. Yes. For me. Yes. You could have moved on. I could have. Adrian rubbed his face. Disbelief mixed with frustration. Frustration mixed with affection. Affection mixed with something far more dangerous. Love. Growing stronger with every recovered memory. Every conversation. Every stolen piece of their shared past. Elias rose from his chair. The problem is no longer whether Adrian remembers. The room grew still. The conductor's expression became grave. The problem is what happens when he does. Adrian felt cold. Very cold. What does that mean? Neither man answered. And suddenly Adrian knew he wasn't going to like whatever came next. Not at all. That night the train arrived as usual. The wind stopped. The platform fell silent. Silver carriages emerged from darkness. But for the first time Adrian boarded. Not as a passenger. As an observer. Elias led him through the train. The interior stretched impossibly far. Carriage after carriage, each larger than physics should allow. Rows of empty seats, soft golden lights, windows revealing landscapes that could not exist. A desert beneath 3 moons. A city made entirely of glass. An endless ocean beneath violet stars. Dreams, memories, possibilities. Entire worlds passing outside the windows. Adrian could only stare. What is this place? The space between endings. Elias continued walking. The last crossroads. Eventually they reached the final carriage. Unlike the others, this one contained a single door. Black, silent, waiting. Adrian felt drawn toward it immediately. His pulse quickened. Lucian stiffened. No. Elias looked at him. He deserves the truth. Not yet. It's already begun. The conductor opened the door. Inside stood a single mirror. Nothing else. Just a mirror. Adrian stepped closer. His reflection stared back. Then changed. Suddenly he wasn't seeing himself. He was seeing memories. Dozens. Hundreds. Thousands. His life with Lucian. Their first meeting. Their first date. Their first apartment. Their first fight. Their first, I love you. Every moment lost to time. Every memory stolen by survival. Adrian reached toward the glass. Tears blurred his vision. So much happiness. So much love. Then, the final memory appeared. The lighthouse. The storm. The night everything ended. And for the first time, Adrian remembered everything. Chapter 5, The Lighthouse in the Storm. The memory struck like lightning. Adrian staggered backward. His hands trembled. His entire body trembled. The mirror showed everything. Not fragments. Not flashes. Everything. The lighthouse stood atop jagged cliffs overlooking the sea. Rain lashed the windows. Wind screamed outside. And inside, he and Lucian were arguing. Not because they were angry, because they were afraid. The storm is getting worse, Adrian said. Lucian was pacing. We still have time. No, we don't. The evacuation boat won't come back. It will. It won't. The memory felt painfully vivid. Adrian remembered every detail now. The scent of salt water. The sound of thunder. The fear he had tried to hide. Lucian stopped pacing. His amber eyes locked onto Adrian's. You know what happens if the lighthouse fails? Adrian did know. The nearby fishing vessels relied on it. Without the beacon, dozens of people could be trapped in dangerous waters. The emergency generator had failed. The main tower was damaged. Someone needed to reach the exterior platform to repair the mechanism. And the storm was becoming deadly. I'll go. Lucian immediately shook his head. No. Lucian. No. Adrian smiled. Even now he remembered that smile. The one that always appeared when he had already made up his mind. The one Lucian hated. Because it usually meant trouble. You know I can do it. That's not the point. It absolutely is. It's dangerous. Adrian stepped forward. So are fishing boats in this weather. The argument ended the same way it always did. With Adrian winning. Not because he was right. Because he was stubborn. Lucian knew it. Adrian knew it. And neither of them would ever admit it. The memory shifted. The tower stairs. The storm. The exterior platform. Rain blinding him. Wind threatening to throw him into the sea. Then, a snap. Metal gave way. The platform collapsed. Adrian fell. The scream that followed wasn't his. It was Lucian's. The memory became chaos. Pain. Water. Darkness. Lucian diving after him. Waves smashing against rocks. Blood. Fear. Then, nothing. The mirror faded. Adrian fell to his knees. The truth remained. Lucian hadn't died because of the storm. Lucian had died saving him. The train carriage felt unbearably quiet. Lucian stood nearby. Watching. Waiting. Adrian slowly rose. His eyes burned. His throat tightened. You saved me. Lucian looked away. Yes. You died because of me. No. The answer came instantly. Firmly. Without hesitation. No. Adrian stared. But. I made a choice. Lucien's voice softened. And I'd make it again. The words shattered whatever defenses remained. Years. 5 years. 5 years carrying guilt. 5 years carrying love. 5 years carrying hope. Alone. Adrian crossed the distance between them, then kissed him. Not carefully. Not hesitantly. The kind of kiss that belonged to people separated by far too much time. Lucien froze. Only briefly. Then his arms wrapped around Adrian, pulling him closer. The train vanished. The world vanished. Everything vanished. Except them. And when they finally separated, both were breathing hard. Lucien rested his forehead against Adrian's. You remembered. Adrian smiled through tears. Every stupid thing. Lucien laughed softly. Good. Even the weather proposal. Lucien groaned. You promised never to mention that. I've broken better promises. For the first time in years, both men laughed. Together. Exactly as they once had. And for a moment, it felt as though fate itself had finally corrected a terrible mistake. But fate wasn't finished yet. Chapter 6. The Last Farewell. The happiness lasted exactly 3 days. Then Elias returned. His expression alone told Adrian everything. Something was wrong. Very wrong. They sat together in the station office. Lucien, Adrian, Elias. Silence filled the room. Finally Adrian spoke. Tell us. The conductor nodded. The memories have fully returned. Adrian frowned. And? Elias looked toward Lucien. The bond has been restored. Neither man understood. Elias continued. For 5 years, Lucien remained because Adrian forgot. The room grew colder. If Adrian never remembered, Lucien could remain between worlds indefinitely. Understanding dawned slowly. Then all at once, Adrian stood. No. Lucien closed his eyes. No. The conductor's voice remained calm. Now that Adrian remembers, the journey is complete. The words felt like a death sentence. Lucien smiled sadly. Looks like our luck finally ran out. Adrian turned toward him. Absolutely not. 5 years. 5 years apart. Only to lose him again? No. No chance. There had to be another way. There isn't. Elias answered the thought before Adrian voiced it. The silence that followed was devastating. Because everyone believed him. Even Lucien. Especially Lucien. The final night arrived. The station felt different. Not lonely. Not haunted. Simply sad. The way a place feels after knowing goodbye is inevitable. The train arrived exactly at midnight. Silver. Silent. Waiting. Lucien stood beside Adrian on the platform. Their hands intertwined. Neither wanted to let go. Neither intended to. I hate trains. Lucien laughed. You always hated trains. I hate this one specifically. Fair. They stood together, watching moonlight shimmer across the tracks. Eventually Lucien spoke. Thank you. Adrian stared. For what? For remembering. The answer nearly broke him. Lucien smiled. For loving me. Adrian grabbed his hand tighter. I never stopped. I know. The train doors opened. The invitation was clear. Time was over. The journey had ended. Lucien stepped forward, then stopped. Adrian refused to release his hand. Neither moved. The train waited. The world waited. Even Elias seemed unwilling to interrupt. Finally Adrian whispered, What if I refuse? Lucien smiled sadly. You can't follow me. Watch me. I mean it. So do I. Lucien's eyes glistened. For the first time since meeting him, tears finally appeared. And Adrian realized something. Lucien wasn't afraid of dying. He never had been. The thing that terrified him was leaving Adrian behind. Again, the realization changed everything. Because suddenly Adrian knew exactly what he needed to do, and exactly who could help. He turned toward Elias. The conductor was already watching, waiting, as though he knew what Adrian would ask. What happens if a soul has no regrets? Silence. Lucien frowned. Elias smiled. A very small smile. The first Adrian had ever seen. And suddenly hope returned. Chapter 7. The Station at Dawn. The answer changed everything. A soul with no regrets moved on. A soul with unfinished business remained. But Lucien no longer carried regret. No longer carried unfinished goodbyes. No longer carried loneliness. He had found Adrian. He had been remembered. He had been loved. Again, the rules should have allowed him to leave. Yet something unprecedented had happened. The train itself disagreed. Because over 5 years, something impossible had occurred. The station had accepted him. The train had accepted him. And most importantly, Adrian had chosen him. Not once, twice. The first time before the storm. The second time after remembering. Elias explained it quietly. Rarely, very rarely, a soul could be given another chance. Not as a spirit. Not as a passenger. As a living person. A return ticket. The rarest journey of all. The price was simple. Both people had to choose it. Without hesitation. Without doubt. Without regret. Elias looked at Lucien. Do you wish to return? Lucien immediately answered. Yes. Then the conductor looked at Adrian. Do you choose him? Adrian laughed. The question itself felt ridiculous. Every time, the station shook. The train whistle echoed. Moonlight exploded across the platform. The world became white, brilliant, endless, warm. Adrian reached for Lucien. Lucien reached for him. Their hands found each other, and neither let go. When Adrian opened his eyes, it was morning, real morning, not the endless twilight of Blackthorn Station. Birds sang nearby. Sunlight warmed his face. For several seconds he simply stared upward, confused, disoriented, alive. Then he heard a familiar voice. You drool when you sleep. Adrian immediately sat up. Lucien sat beside him. Very much alive. Very much solid. Very much real. For a moment neither spoke. Then Adrian tackled him. The resulting crash nearly knocked both of them off the bench. Lucien laughed helplessly. Adrian kissed him repeatedly. Forehead, cheek, nose, mouth, everywhere. You are unbelievably annoying. Lucien grinned. You seem happy about it. I am. The confession came easily. Because after everything they'd survived, life felt simple. Beautifully simple. Lucien rested his forehead against his. Finally, Adrian smiled. We're here. And just like that, the years apart were finally over. 3 years later, the old station remained. Not abandoned anymore. Not forgotten. A small cafe occupied the former office. Travelers occasionally stopped there. Locals loved it. The coffee was excellent. The owners were mildly ridiculous, especially when they argued over weather forecasts. You're wrong. I'm not. You absolutely are. I'm literally looking at the forecast. Forecasts can be wrong. Lucien groaned. Adrian laughed. Outside, a train passed through town. Perfectly ordinary train. Nothing supernatural. Nothing mysterious. Just steel tracks and passengers heading somewhere. Lucien slipped an arm around Adrian's waist. Adrian leaned into him naturally, comfortably. Home. The sunset painted the horizon gold. For a moment neither spoke. They simply watched. Together. Exactly where they belonged. Far beyond the town. Far beyond the sea. Far beyond life and death. A silver train continued its endless journey, guiding lost souls toward peace. And somewhere aboard, a smile curved across Elias's face. Another story finished. Another ending earned. A happy one. At last. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support means a lot and really helps me as I begin this journey of growing this channel. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.